7 members of one of Scotland's biggest child abuse rings have been given lifelong sentences and warned that they may never be released. 3 victims under the age of 13 were subjected to horrific abuse and violence in a Glasgow drug den dubbed the Beastie House over a 7-year period. Police said the children had suffered unimaginable abuse, with the offences including the R word, attempted murder and assault. Ian Owens, 46, Elaine Lannery, 40, Leslie Williams, 43, Paul Brannan, 42, Scott Forbes, 51, Barry Watson, 48, and John Clark, 49, were jailed for between 8 and 20 years and handed orders for lifelong restrictions. These orders are reserved for the most serious court cases in Scotland which do not involve murder and mean the individual will be either in prison or on parole for the rest of their lives. It's the least they deserve. Judge Lord Beckett told the gang, whose jail sentences totalled more than 93 years, that they may never be released from prison. He said, "This court is used to hearing the worst cases of human behaviour, but such depravity towards young children is beyond my experience. This is not typical behaviour, and such extreme abuse of children seems to be rare." He praised the formidable strength of the children and their courage and perseverance, which, despite threats from Owens, you can judge a book by its cover, can't you? Lord Beckett added, "It is possible to imagine from their desperate darkness, their careers have brought some light to their young lives, a home, a structure and a nurture over a number of years." The judge also highlighted the victim impact statements and said one child wrote with agonising articulacy about her ordeal and the suffering of the other children. He added, "In stark contrast to what was inflicted on her and its impact, an impression of innate humanity shines through her words." 2 girls and a boy were violently, and the word assaulted on multiple occasions between 2012 and 2019. The trial heard that the gang would hold R nights and dance and sex nights in a squalid flat in Glasgow that was frequented by drug users. A girl was the word beginning with R by members of the gang while she was still young enough to wear a nappy. She described the flat as the dark and scary Beastie House because she had been locked in a cupboard with a box that was full of spiders. The girl was also shut in an oven and a fridge and was forced to eat dog food. An older boy and girl were also subjected to savage beatings and violence. Members of the gang also used Class A drugs in front of the children and caused them to consume alcohol and drugs. I mean, is it skipping anyone else's attention that, where's the parents? Like, what they do, drop the kid off? Probably in the next room getting on it. The trial heard that the children first came into contact with social work in Glasgow in August 2017 and were deemed to be at risk in July 2018. Allegations of violence and sexual abuse did not come to light until March 2020. Police were alerted by a man who got to know the children. One of the victims became hysterical when she mistakenly thought she had been shut in a room. The man and his wife then documented details of what the children recalled happening at the hands of the gang. Jurors were also told Owens, Lannery, Williams, Watson, Clark and Forbes, who was known as Scott the cameraman, all had previous convictions, but none were of any of the type of an crime. The gang had denied the charges but were found guilty in November 2023 after a 2-month trial at the High Court in Glasgow. Owens, Lannery, Brannan and Williams were found guilty of attempted murder. Charges related to causing the children to take part in seances and witchcraft were dropped during the trial. Nobody wants to hear about devil worshipping during a pedo trial, do they? Sentencing has been delayed until now because of delays in risk assessments, which were ordered to help Lord Beckett decide whether to impose the lifelong restrictions order. Owens was jailed for at least 20 years before he can apply for parole, Lannery for 17 years, Brannan for 15 and Williams for 14. Clark was sentenced to at least 10 years, Watson to 9 years and 6 months and Forbes to 8 years. Another woman, 40-year-old Marianne Gallagher, was convicted of one count of assault to injury but was cleared of all other charges. Her sentence was initially deferred for 12 months for good behaviour and returned to court on the 6th of January this year. She was spared further punishment and admonished by Lord Beckett after he heard Gallagher had not reoffended over the last year. Oh, good girl. After the sentencing, Deputy Inspector Leslie Ann McGee said it had been a long, complex and challenging investigation and that she hoped the outcome could help the young victims move forward. She also urged anyone who has been affected by abuse to contact Police Scotland no matter how much time has passed. An independent chair of Glasgow's Child Protection Committee said the case would now be the subject of a case learning review. He said this would be led by an independent expert and feature input from agencies, individuals and families. Mary Glasgow, Chief Executive of Children First, said no sentence would reflect the extreme cruelty and horrific abuse that the children experienced. She added, the depths of their suffering will be unimaginable to most people in Scotland, but none of us should turn away from it. This is one of the most extreme cases of abuse ever seen in a Scottish court, but everyday children and young people in Scotland are experiencing violence and abuse. Leading KC Tommy Ross said orders for lifelong restrictions are reserved for the most serious court cases which do not involve murder. Before an order is imposed, the subject must undergo an extensive risk process conducted by a psychologist, which typically takes. A judge then sets a minimum prison term, known as the punishment part, that the offender must serve before they are eligible to apply for parole. And if granted parole, they are subject to recall back to prison in the event that they commit any new offence or breach the terms of their. The BBC, essentially, when you get an order for lifelong restriction, you'll either be in prison or parole for the rest of your natural.